Okay folks, so we're now going to go into the next part of the session. But I want you to remember, you know, as we go through this, a lot of this information may seem, you know, kind of obvious to you because you're either a professor or that you're, you know, more advanced in your study. But try and understand it from the perception of a student who's an undergraduate and only comes into university. Because these are the skill sets that, you know, a student who's going to undertake you know, a period of study, they need to have these skills. And when you master these skills, they'll stay with you for life. You know, so when you leave university, you know, you'll be more effective in your work, you know, and you'll be able to use information better. So try and look at it from that perspective, okay? And hopefully then this particular session is on the effectiveness and the efficiencies of search strategies and how you should go about that. So Corey will lead off.
Okay, so first question is, how many people here have been to London in the United Kingdom? Okay, so you'll have heard of this Mind the Gap. It's what they say, the London Underground, mind the gap, you get out. You mind the gap, you don't go down here. So this is what this is, mind the information gap. And they've taken this idea from the London Underground and used it, you know, to emphasize this point about the gap between the information you have and the information you need. Okay? So, information resources. Okay, here are some examples of very common information resources. Library catalogues, specialist catalogues, digital gateways, internet search engines. So library catalogue, I'm sure your library here in Saransk, you have an online library catalogue. The student can be in their home many miles away, they can look up the book to see if it's in the library, etc., etc.
Do you have off-campus access to the library catalogue? No. Okay, so it's very common in libraries now that students will be able to access the catalogue from their home or from, you know, their smartphone, you know. So that's where your library should be going to. So you should be demanding that you have off-campus access to your resources as well, which we'll cover later.
And a library catalogue is basically, as well as books, it gives the student references and links, and it lists of not just books but also multimedia tapes and videos. And now increasingly what's happened is that the library catalogue, it links in, it tells you where not just, you know, physical items are, okay? It also tells you, and will in some cases link you directly into the virtual item, okay? So what's amazing about this is that nowadays you really have only two types of information, I suppose. You have physical stuff, you know, such as, can I borrow one of these? Such as this book. Okay, this is a physical item. You know, the student can search the library catalogue. The library catalogue might tell them, yes, this book is in the library. They'll walk into the library, pick up the book, take it up to the person at the desk. The person at the desk will check the book out to them. They'll take it home. It's a physical item that they can touch. And now you have virtual items. Online books, online journals, online newspapers, that library catalogues will link into directly. So you're linking into the item. You're not walking into the library anymore because this can be done virtually. You can do it instead of walking in. This is what you're using as your feet. You're using the mouse to actually access the information. So we emphasize this a lot, that basically there's loads of different types of information, but if you want to break it down, it's really in the context of libraries and information literacy, you're talking about physical stuff and non-physical stuff, i.e. virtual, online, okay? Then these specialist catalogues then, these hold items on a particular subject or special collection. A specialist catalogue may be separate from the main library catalogue. A digital gateway then, these are websites that provide links to sources of information and additional websites within a particular subject area. So I'm not going to go into too much of that. Gerald is going to cover that in depth tomorrow. We have a session tomorrow on web search strategies and tactics, and we'll go into that in more detail.
Can I just ask a question? Do you have, I know you have online databases, but do you have digital books available? Like as Padraig said, okay, you have the physical book, but do you have digital books? Yes. Okay. So if you say conceptualize that maybe 30 years ago, or maybe more, if you go back 100 years ago, the problem is that students didn't have access to information. Okay, they would only have the physical book. And if you go back to ancient times, people would have to go up to the monastery, and the monk would open the door, and if he was in a good mood, he might answer your question or he might give you some information. If he was in a bad mood, he closed the door. So you had no information. So everybody was peasants. We were all information poor. Now we're information rich. So now we have digital books. I mentioned we have 500,000 digital books in our library. We have hundreds of digital journals. We have hundreds of physical journals. We have hundreds of thousands of books. Now where's the problem for the student? They're now information rich. They've got more information now than you could throw a stick at. Okay? They're so rich in information now that there's digital books and digital websites, digital journals, digital this, digital that. Everything is digital, and you've got the physical stuff. So the problem now is that you have too much information. Okay? So, monk, it's not a problem anymore. Now you have loads of information, but the problem is which information should you be looking at and which is the most important information. And that's a big problem for students because they don't know whether is it this digital book or this digital journal, or is it in this database, or is it on Google, or is it where? So this is why this stuff is important. Thanks, Paul.
And an internet search engine, okay, everybody knows what these are. I mean, what's the most famous, well-known, most used probably internet search engine at the moment? Whether it's the best one or not, that's another question. But Google is, and as I said, in libraries, certainly in Ireland, in the UK, and in other parts of Europe, what's happening now is that these internet search engines are being created. Okay, for example, when we one of the first things we learned here when we arrived at the university was one of the staff here told us that that Saransk University has access to maybe 30, 40 online databases. And now what's happening with these internet search engines is that they're being used to create one interface to search across all of them simultaneously. Okay, so this is what's happening, this is what's cutting edge at the moment. So we'll move on then. So some sources of information, right? Sources can be in different media. They can be hard copy, it can be electronic, videos, audio, and nowadays, certainly under the electronic bracket there are all these new, what social media, I suppose is what you call them, particularly as resources like YouTube, which is being increasingly used by academics to put up their conference papers, for lectures. YouTube, it began as a very popular kind of resource, but it's becoming more and more scholarly. And even resources like, does anybody use Twitter? Anybody heard of something called Twitter? There is something called Twitter. It's quite highly used in our part of the world and in the States, and this, maybe Gerald can explain this a bit better than I can, but It's used basically just by people to send short snippets of information about different things. Is that a good?
Yes.
Is that a good? And it's been the reason this is starting to crop up in academia is that, you know, people in politics are using these Twitter. Academics are using Twitter. People are using this, and hence what they say can wind up in someone's thesis possibly, or somebody's assignment. So all these new different forms are coming into play.
For example, just one quick example. About 2 years ago, there was a government election, or there was a presidential election in Ireland. And there was, say, 4 or 5 candidates going for a president. The one guy who looked like he was going to be the next day the president, somebody sent a Twitter message, which is only 159 characters. So a little small message to the media about this guy had taken a bribe. And within 2 minutes, his chances of being president was gone. So this is how important this media has actually got. So now, when you try and reference, well, okay, what brought down this candidate in a presidential election, you have to be able to do a reference on Twitter. So you'll have to do it the same as you would do in a book. So these new medias are becoming very important for spreading news. As Porrick says, academics are using them. So they're, you know, in the future, the likes of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and all of these social medias will become as important as the written book or the written journal. So you need to know these type of medias also.
So just moving on to electronic, we talked a bit about this. What does electronic mean? It could be e-journals, electronic books, electronic articles, official and unofficial website content, recommended reading, excuse me, university or course-specific content. Has anybody, you've heard of this phrase, virtual learning environment? Moodle, have you heard Moodle? Yes, where the lecturer uploads content for the student, basically the student pulls down the content and reads it, etc. And these are, in nearly every university now has one of these virtual learning environments. Why? Because firstly it saves paper, saves you know, rainforests and things like that. And also, it saves time. You know, the lecturer can just upload, maybe at home he can upload, or she can upload the material onto Moodle. The student can access it within seconds after it's uploaded. Also then, as I said there, all these new kind of resources, some of them they're chat rooms, blogs, wikis, YouTube, Facebook, maybe even Twitter. And we've talked about hard copy there. Hard copy books then, examples. This is the old-fashioned, the old traditional formats. But the interesting thing about books is that people thought they would have gone away by now. You know, that there was, people were predicting that, you know, even by now in 2014, that people wouldn't be using books anymore, that everybody would be using online books. And that hasn't happened, you know, because I suppose the book, it's a very accessible format, and it's a nice format. You can put it into your bag, etc. But certainly, books have been challenged greatly by online books, and online books are increasingly coming to the fore. You have those devices like Kindle, is that?
Yeah.
Kindle, which have really put it up to books. But certainly, the physical book, it doesn't look like it's going to go away at the moment, anyway, and it still exists, you know. As we all know. Other important formats in journals, conference proceedings, PhD theses, specialist reports. And what are the strengths of books? Books, particularly classic texts, giving introductory and intermediate level knowledge, as well as advanced or technical skills. And they're easy to browse and get an overview, okay? The weaknesses then, they may be out of date as soon as they're printed. This is a big problem. And they're not searchable. Okay, you can search a book. You can go to the index and look up where everywhere in the index it talks about e-learning, for example. But you can't search a book in the same instantaneous way that you can search an online book. You know, these online book resources, you can just type in a word and it'll go to wherever in the book this word appears, just like that, okay? So this is one of the disadvantages of the old-fashioned book. They're not as searchable instantly as the online books. Conference proceedings then, these are important still. These include papers, presentations, posters. It could be electronic or paper-based. And the strengths and weaknesses of conference papers, they're highly authoritative. They're quite up to date, you know, because everybody appearing at the conference, you know, the proceedings, they usually come out about a month or two or after, or they, in some cases they may be out even before the conference takes place. So hence they can be very up to date, easy to retrieve. Weaknesses then is a high level of assumed knowledge, esoteric language, subject matter, and they can be expensive. Conference papers can be very expensive to buy for a library. So is there any questions before we move on? Okay. So then this whole area of what's known as primary, secondary and tertiary information. The information supply chain. Information is linked directly from producer to consumer in a number of stages. There are several conditions. How much is information being filtered and processed from producers to users? What are the values of people in the supply chain? Has the context or purpose changed? Has the meaning been gradually transformed? How have publication cycles affected the currency of the information? And then this famous theory of the primary, secondary and tertiary resources. Primary then are usually original, previously unpublished information. For example, it could be scientific journal articles, it could be conference papers, it could be technical reports. Primary sources are generally considered to be scholarly. Secondary sources then are primary information commented on and reinterpreted. Books, review articles, index and abstracting tools. Tertiary sources then contain primary and secondary information in specific subject areas, encyclopedias, directories, reference tools, etc. Okay. Now, excuse me. If you find you're running out of information, if you find you don't have enough information, that your library can't supply the resources that you need, or can't supply a specific resource, okay? Students can get bogged down, they can get, you know, they can get caught up if they don't have access to one specific resource. It's very important. I'm sure, do you have such a scheme as interlibrary loan in the Russian Federation, where you know, libraries lend books to other libraries for a period of time so a student can have... You have this system in the Russian Federation? Interlibrary loan? Yes, interlending, yes, yeah. And this is a very important way of expanding really this interlibrary loan service. It's an amazing service, and it's probably has existed as long as libraries have existed. But, you know, and basically the student can get the book from another library. They can fill up a form, make an application to get the library. The library might come, maybe if you're in Ireland, it might come from a library in Dublin down to Limerick. If you're here in Russia, it might come from Moscow to Saransk. Then the book will go back up, etc., etc. And it's very useful for expanding the collection, and it's become super efficient in recent years because certainly with articles, journal articles, the interlibrary loan service would work always by post. And the problem with post is you have to wait for it to come to you. So if it's coming from England, for example, it might not get you for 5 days. But now what's happening is that these journal articles are being sent electronically. So, you know, the service is very fast nowadays. You can have access to pretty much any article through this interlibrary loan service electronically in, you know, some cases under 48 hours. And the interlibrary own, they may be of help, this service, if you come to a dead end and there are other resources that would help you get back on the road again. Okay. So just a summary of what we've talked about: information resources, catalogues, gateways, search engines, information sources, websites, electronic conference papers. Okay. So we're just going to move on to the third book here, Search Strategies and Tactics. So why do you search? Why do you search for information? Because you need to continually re-examine the exact reasons for your search and keep in mind how you will use the results. Why are you searching and how will you use the results? Write down the reasons and the uses. You should aim to be effective. You know, find the right information. Be efficient. You need to find the right information with the minimum effort and time. And you must also consider date range. This is very important. And this is often a stumbling block that students encounter. They don't know where to start searching from. You know, should my study include everything written from 1997 up to the present day, or only from 2003 to the present day? And we would always say to students that ask your supervisor, or ask a peer, ask another academic, ask maybe a head of department, ask somebody who may have published a lot in that field. And they will be able to advise you, you know, on what the date range should be. Okay. Okay, just a little bit more there about print material. Books and journals are often overlooked in preference to electronic sources. So this is what I was saying earlier, that the regular book is still with us. It hasn't gone away. It's still quite popular. And books in the initial stages of your study can introduce concepts and provide perspective, introduce terminology. They give bibliographies, of course, which are very useful to lead you down further avenues of study and thought. You can look at the bibliography. You can try to source those resources listed in the bibliography. You can read them. Okay. Now, just a little bit more about library catalogues. Library catalogues typically allow you to search for real resources such as books, videos, audio cassettes, journal titles, or for virtual. So remember what I was saying, everything nowadays is either real, it's physical item sitting on a shelf, or it's virtual. And I'm sure you've used these before. Catalogues may look different. They all provide basically the same type of search options. You can search by author, by title, by subject, etc. Now, this is the most important section of this book 3, and it's all about search tactics. And this is more to do with searching online, searching online databases. And you need to have a knowledge of these different skills, right? Because if you don't, you won't get the most out of on online databases. They all have their little tricks, their little ways of searching, and if you don't know them, you may not be getting the most out of the resource. So for example, subscription. What this means, if the database or website requires subscription, you may need a username and password. So in what case do you think you'd need a username and password? Do you need a username and password, for example, to search Google? No, because it's a free resource. Or do you need but you need a username and password to search usually library databases, because they're subscription based, and this means that the library has paid, in some cases, a substantial amount of money to make a particular database available to students. So keep that in mind. I mean, if you are searching on the internet, you've probably often come across this really great website that you would like to use, but but it may present a username and password that you may not have because your library may not be subscribed. Okay, so this is what this means. So access depends on whether your institution has paid for the individual resource. Okay, registration then. Some websites are free. Google is free, for example, but other require registration to use them. So this means that you have to sign up with your name, you get a username and password, etc., etc. Keywords then, this is very important. Remember what I was saying, that you can use a thesaurus, for example, to analyze your research questions, and you need to extract the keywords that will help you find the information you need. And those keywords will help you identify other keywords, which may mean the same, but as I said earlier, if you're doing a study about renewable energy, okay, the word sustainable energy might also find information about renewable energy. Wind power, this phrase might find information about renewable energy. There's lots of other words that are out there that are related to the words that are in the title of your research question, of your dissertation, which will help you find the information. Okay. And spelling then, strangely enough, a large percentage of searches fail because users either type too quickly or have not used the correct spelling. Now, luckily, in recent years, you've probably noticed on Google and some of these other online resources that it provides this, it actually offers you the correct spelling automatically. Now, this is not the case for all online library databases by any means. I mean, some some search engines have this feature, which is very handy. Others don't have it at all. So it's important to spell. Make sure you have the correct spelling. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on the information that you need. Okay, that's just about synonyms there, and using thesauruses and that sort of thing. And then Boolean logic. So in 1854, the British mathematician George Boole invented a simple algebra for manipulating logic. So basically, just to put it simple, I'm not sure I particularly like that illustration there, but just to put it simple, if you're looking for something about cats, okay, and you don't want the word dogs to come in to the actual search results that come back, you just type in cats and then N-O-T, not dogs, okay? If you want something to come back about both cats and dogs, you just type in cats and dogs. If you want articles to come up that mention cats and dogs, but also the articles that come up that are just about cats and just about dogs, you would say cat and then OR for or dogs. So this is quite common when you're searching online databases. And this is possibly the most important one you need to be aware of. This is called bound phrase searching, okay? So if we think of very common phrases like, renewable energy, this is a phrase. Global warming, okay, this is a phrase. Human resources, this is a phrase. Human capital. These are all phrases, but if you're searching for a phrase, most online databases want you to put that phrase in these inverted commas here. Otherwise, it won't search for it as a phrase, and you might get some articles to come back that have that specifically in the title, but you'll get a lot of articles that may just have the word magnetic in the title. or it may just have, you know, resonance in the title, or it may just have imaging. So just beware of that one.
So just, do people use that? If you're searching even Google, do you put it in inverted commas? No? No? Okay, it would make your life much easier, you know, if you were to put your search like this. So try it when you go back to your office. Look for a phrase and just put the inverted commas in, and it's very useful.
Then this tool is called truncation, and some search systems allow what's called wildcard characters in the search strings, and this indicates any missing character. So in this example, this auto and use of this asterisk will find any word starting with the word auto. Okay? It's a way of broadening your research. This one here indicates you're missing one character. When would you use that? You might use that if, for example, if you had the name of an author but you weren't entirely sure how his name was spelled. This is the way you might, or if there's just a term that you're not 100% sure of the spelling, you know, or if you think, for example, that there might be different, you know, localization of spelling, as in, you know, the way in America there's different spelling on certain words than there is in Ireland and the UK, you might use this truncation. Okay. And truncation, what it does, it basically cuts a word to its basic part. So you see here, H-O-U-S will not just bring back house, it'll bring back house, houses, housing, household, housewife, etc.
Has anybody used that? No? Okay, and tomorrow, when we're doing the internet searching, I'll explain that some search engines will allow you to use these tools, and some of them won't. And the importance will be that, you know, you need to know what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do within a certain search engine, and I'll show you that tomorrow.
And next one, narrowing and widening then. If your search is too general, you'll probably get thousands of hits. Using more precise terms, you can narrow down your search and give more relevant results and save time. So what fields would you use? You can use date range, for example. This is a common one. Say the number of years to search, excuse me, such as you're going to search for all articles between 1996 to 2004. And I suppose, how do you know that that's the date range? The answer to that is you might know from doing your own searching, you might know from talking to your supervisor, you might know from talking to a colleague. You know, restricting language. For example, if you just use English or German or Russian or whatever, if you restrict to a geographic area, in Google, for example, there's a way now in the advanced search of only searching for articles that published on, for example, .ru. .ru is for Russia, yes. Only published in .ru sites or .ie sites or .uk sites. Okay, you can use this. And restricting format, and this is in Google Advanced, which I think will be covered tomorrow a bit. There is a way of actually restricting the format type, and this is extremely important because most, this is not to say that everything that's published in PDF format is scholarly, but generally anything that emanates from, you know, a government or a university or from a scholar, if they put something up online, they put it up in PDF, and hence you can bring back all the PDF content with using this Google Advanced type search.
Has anybody used advanced searching in Google? Anybody? No? Okay. This is why tomorrow, like we're now, you know, we're making you aware of it now, but tomorrow we'll go through all of this, and really, it'll really advance your whole searching techniques after tomorrow's and today's workshop. So bear with us. I know it's a slow process, but by the end of the process tomorrow, hopefully you'll have a whole new range of skills. You should be happy. When I say that, you can smile and say, oh, that's good. Okay.
And so, what happens in the case that your search has been so successful that you have, you now have too few hits? You've executed such a specific search that you don't have enough information now. What you can do then is widen the date range. Maybe take everything from 1990 to 2007. You can take out words. You can search across all fields and format type. And then search history. Many databases store search histories, and you can check all the searches you performed in a session, and that's useful also. So I'm just going to leave that whole area. We have not much time left. I'm just going to spend, because I think we have 10 minutes for questions at the end. I'm just going to spend about 5 to maybe 7 minutes about this whole area of evaluating information. So this is book 5. I would ask you in your own time, I'm not going to go into more of this advanced searching, just goes into more of the same of what I've showed you in book 3. I would ask you in your own time, it's a good chapter to read, you learn a lot from it, and you know, please have a look if you have the opportunity and time. So evaluating information then, and I'm just going to one specific part of this, you can read the rest of it also. But remember at the very beginning of this training, or this session, I asked you, what do you need to evaluate anything, to evaluate information? To evaluate a book, conference paper, DVD, anything, what do you need?
Yep, mention the...
You need evaluation criteria. Okay, you need criteria. And what are the criteria you need? Here are some examples. Firstly, authority. Who is the author? Is the author credible? Is the text from a respected, trusted source and hence critically evaluated by experts? And how expert are the experts, okay? Somebody could be, have written a very good piece of work, a very good article, but they may not be specialists in their field. They may be writing slightly outside their field. So how expert are they? Has it been peer reviewed? And this means a scholarly article. Is it a scholarly article which has been through the process of subjecting an author's work to the scrutiny of others, expert in the field? Scholars will assess whether the work meets the academic standards of that discipline. How do you trust a source, right? Read the text critically. Have you consulted a tutor or mentor? Have you checked the biography of the author? Have you looked up the publisher? This will give insight to the bias of the article, especially for newspapers. Have you asked colleagues and friends about this resource? Have you examined the language used? And read the citation. Read the bibliographic citation. A full bibliographic record can be checked for authenticity and assures you that there is no attempted or accidental plagiarism. A well-cited article will lead to further lines of investigation. And peer reviewing, then, as I said earlier, just to reiterate, is the process in which articles are closely scrutinized by a panel of academic or professional experts of a similar high caliber of knowledge and experience as the writer himself or herself. However, the authority of peer review journal is only as good as the experts who are reviewing them. Okay. And currency, we discussed this a bit earlier. This is extremely important. When was it written? When was it published? Has the climate of opinion changed since it was published? What is the issue, the edition, the publication date? If it's software that you are examining, what is the software version? And when did you visit the website? Okay? Or when did anybody last visit this website? When was this website last updated? I mean, if you go to a website and it's purporting to be scholarly in the area of renewable energy, but if you see that this website last updated 17th of June 2009, like, you know, this is probably not a reliable resource if it's not being updated. So the date, this is important. Okay, just beware of that. And beware of, you know, things like software versions. And an important point there, due to the transient nature of internet sources, it is vital to cite the date you visited the website, as well as the publication details. And relevance then, how closely is the text related to your subject? You could read an excellently written article, right, but may not be relevant enough to your study. Okay, it may be slightly outside or may not be relevant enough. It could still be well written and well cited, but it may not be relevant. And as it says there, an irrelevant text, no matter how good, will not answer your questions. Have you considered your audience? If a skeptical audience responds with yes, but, and then you have not fully answered the questions. Have you linked your information? Keep looking for links which tie your case together in a logical format. Completeness then. Have you answered the entire question? You know, a resource may only give part of the answer. Have you looked for further leads? Okay? And further leads, and this is a very good signifier of something that is of quality. Because if the resource doesn't have a bibliography, for example, if it doesn't have references, if it doesn't have footnotes or any kind of citations, then it's not, you know, the work is incomplete. Okay? And accuracy then, peer-reviewed journals will have been closely scrutinized for what's called mechanical accuracy. So there's two types of accuracy. Mechanical accuracy is things like basic grammar, punctuation, spelling, overly long sentences. And if there are consistent problems with this in the piece of work you're reading, then it's best not to use it, probably because it's not, you know, if the article or the book is so poorly written that even the spelling isn't correct, then this is not usable. Now this would be very rare with physical books. It would be very unusual for something like that to be published. But what they're talking about here is more, excuse me, more online articles, online information, which can be dubious, you know, the quality. And factual accuracy. How do you think you assess factual accuracy?
You have to refer to other sources and
yes,
check.
Yeah, the referencing and citation. You know, if the facts are backed up by appropriate references and citation. Some phrases to watch then. You know, you may have come across a resource, possibly, which is poorly written and which might say, excuse me, which might say statements like, research has shown that, okay? But in the article it doesn't show what the research is that has shown this, you know, or it might say, project was overspent. It doesn't give the name of the project. Or maybe it might say, you know, these things you need to watch out for, just phrases that aren't backed up by any citations or any experts. Factual accuracy then will only be achieved with extensive reading, linking and comparing related texts, identifying emerging patterns, arguing cases, analysing critically and verifying facts. Okay? Bias then, what is the natural bias of the source? Okay? And language, style and tone. Do you think you can use you know, a type of writing that's chatty, informal, when you're writing a journal article or when you're writing a thesis? Probably not, because it would come across very badly. You know, the language is formal. You know, when you're writing, usually for articles. And who is the target audience? Is the content pitched at the right level? Do you need to paraphrase or rewrite it? Is the writing chatty, informal, reasoned, exaggerated? What's the target audience? Okay. Okay, I think we've covered that now pretty well. So I think it's just after 12. If anybody has any questions or anybody would like to add anything or any questions for us?
I think for us it would be very interesting to hear your opinion about how we can publish our papers in foreign journals. So what shall we do to do this?
Right.
Maybe you can name some of the journals in the humanities and the procedure, how it goes on.
Okay.
So maybe tomorrow, I don't know.
And this is exactly what we're going to do tomorrow. So like this was like, okay, looking at the you know, how to formalize your search strategies, you know, your research questions. This is like, you know, some of the hints that you need to do, you know, before you you know, quote somebody or you're going to use material in your journal article. You have to, like I'll be mentioning it tomorrow, is the criteria that Pádraig mentioned there of assessing information is really important. Okay, so if you get that wrong and you don't have those skills of the evaluating information, if you don't get that right, then when you go to submit your paper to you know, a US publisher or a UK publisher, they'll look at it and they go, it's rubbish, you know. So before you start, you know, you're finished, you know. So what Pádraig will do tomorrow is he'll be explaining about the actual referencing and citation component that you have to have 100% right. So if you don't have it 100% right, the you know, when they go to evaluate the quality of your article, they'll, you know, they just won't do it. If you can't do this part, this is an essential component of being an academic, is that you know how to do citation and referencing. And if you can't do that, well then you're not an academic, you know, and you won't get published. So Pádraig will go into that tomorrow, and I'll be then dealing tomorrow with the internet searching, because everybody needs to search the internet. Like, I'm not going to stand here and say, oh, you know, you're not going to use Google. Everybody uses Google. But what I'll be showing you tomorrow are alternative to Google's, particularly in an academic field. You have to know where are the other sources of information that you can find. And by the time you are finished tomorrow, you'll be aware of maybe a few hundred different academic websites that you'll be able to use, which has very high quality content. And I'll show you tomorrow some skills, as the Americans would call it, we'll lift up the hood and have a look at the engine itself. So we'll have a look at the search engine and say why this search engine is different to this search engine, and why you should use this one and not this one. Okay? So tomorrow we'll go through referencing, citation and bibliographies, I think, Pádraig, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And then I'll do some web searching. And then when you look back, hopefully over 2 days, you will kind of see that you will have a lot more kind of skills and knowledge that you'll be able to use in your work, you know, further down the line. So that's our hope. At this stage, you can smile. You can say, good. Okay, so has anybody any questions first? Not very quiet. Not very tired. Everybody wants to go to lunch. Okay, folks. So we'll see you tomorrow at 10.